Hey guys, welcome back to the Carla and Crappy show. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Crappy.
We are one weekend past rivalry week, which means this week could pretty much only be one thing in college football. Carla, what would that be?
That would be championship week.
And we love championship. We've got a mess of championship games, some official, some de facto, and of course, we will start as we always do with the conference that's nearest and dearest to our hearts, the Big Ten. In the Big Ten title game, we have Nebraska playing undefeated Ohio State on Saturday. Right. What I meant to say was that we have Nebraska playing a very, very strong Penn State team on Saturday for the What I actually meant to say was we have Nebraska playing a Wisconsin team that has just sucked at the end of the season. I'm not even sure I'm going to watch this mess, although I'm a Big Ten freak, and who am I kidding? Of course I will. Nebraska and Wisconsin. Carla, what do you got?
This actually was a relatively entertaining game earlier in the season before Wisconsin kind of finally decided to, I don't know, lose to Penn State, which I'm not upset about, being a Penn State fan.
Lost to Ohio State, too. But
yes, they did. And yes, you're right. This should be Ohio State in this game. If it's not Ohio State, this should be Penn State in this game. Wisconsin has lost 3 of their last 4, all 3 in overtime, which means that so they're at least playing close games. And when they met earlier this year, Wisconsin was actually leading the game and was dominating early, and Nebraska had to really rally to come back and win that game, and they won it on a field goal. It was a field goal differential. It was like 30-27, I think was the final. Nebraska is just a slight favorite in this game, and I'm not really sure I understand why. Obviously they should be favored. I was kind of surprised at how low the favor was toward Nebraska. Rex Burkhead came back last week. That's huge for Nebraska, even if he's only at 75 to 80%, to be able to get him in there for a couple carries in crucial moments is going to be huge. It was huge for them last week. It'll be huge for them in this game. Taylor Martinez is I don't think he's going to let them lose this game. So I see Nebraska winning pretty easily in this one. I don't think it's going to be nearly as close as it was the first time they met. What do you see?
When I said Wisconsin sucked, I'm bitter and was perhaps exaggerating a little bit. I do want to start before I get to the actual game. A friend of mine found this stat in the Cleveland Plain Dealer after last weekend. The 2 Pork Division teams that are ineligible for postseason play in the conference this year were 14-2. The rest of the Pork Division teams in conference play were a combined 9-23.
Wow.
And as I thought about this and watched the former Ohio State coach, whose name shall not be spoken, get carried out on the shoulders to a standing ovation in Ohio Stadium, my head wanted to explode. However, Wisconsin, I've actually been impressed with particularly their defense late this season, and I think that's why the spread in this game is as tight as it is. I'm going to go with you with a Nebraska championship here. I think this will be another tight game. The overtime is not out of the question in this one, but I think it'll be a good one. And as you pointed out, Burkhead perhaps makes the difference in the outcome. Next up, one that we can get through fairly quickly. The Atlantic Coast Conference, they do still play football, and they have a championship game coming this weekend. Carla, what do you see?
And they do, and it's another, if you look at the records, it's another Big Ten title game, because Florida State is 10-2, and Georgia Tech is 6-6. Did you see any of Georgia beating Georgia Tech last week? I mean, it was disgusting. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And this is another game that Georgia Tech backed into because Miami forfeited their postseason preemptively. So this should be Florida State-Miami.
Preemptive postseason bans. That's an excellent idea.
Who'd have thought it? But so this is kind of a back-ended, kind of messed up game in and of itself. My apologies to and I'm going to switch conferences here for a second. My apologies to the fans of the Florida Gators. I overestimated Florida State last week. I thought E.J. Manuel was on his game. He had an unnatural number of interceptions and turnovers in that game. But Georgia Tech's not Florida. Sorry. Hate to say that. Georgia Tech's weakness is its defense, which doesn't bode well for going up against a Florida State offense that is usually pretty potent. That's just not a good. It's just not a good matchup. The only glimpse of hope, and I hate to say hope because this is a sad situation, but the only glimpse of hope that Georgia Tech has in this game is the fact that Florida State's leading tackler is out with an ACL. And he won't be playing in this game. So there is a slight glimmer of hope there, but I think this one's going to be over before halftime. I really do.
I can sum this one up pretty quickly. Florida State going to be a massacre, and then Florida State bolts for the SEC. That's all I got.
Interesting theory. I like it.
Okay.
Hey, if I made a bold prediction last week about Louisville, and we'll get to them in a second, you can make the bold prediction this week.
Consider it made. Completely taking these out of order of importance, I guess, if you're looking at the national picture. Next up, we have the SEC title game, Alabama and Georgia. What you got for this one?
Those of you that wanted a football playoff, a college football playoff, congratulations. This is a national semifinal.
There it is.
It is. The winner of this game will play Notre Dame. No doubt about it. I fought with this one for a long time while I was looking at the numbers. But I keep going back to that Georgia-Florida game. When Georgia beat Florida, they forced 6 turnovers in that game and dominated. Alabama's going to be without Kenny Bell, their second leading receiver, and their primary deep threat. Alabama is the team everybody's talking about. Everybody's already talking about an Alabama-Notre Dame national title game. I actually think Georgia pulls this off. Just because everybody's focused all their attention on Alabama, and Georgia's kind of like how we exist over here in the SEC East. And nobody's, and nobody's paying attention to them. And they have, if you look at their wins, their resume of wins is pretty outstanding. And they, beating Florida is a better win than any win that Alabama had this year, based on ranking. And they dominated that game against Florida. If Georgia goes in and plays this game like they're playing Florida, I think they pull this out and surprise everybody. And then the funny part about the whole thing is that Alabama, who backed into the national title game last year, could possibly, in essence, not make a BCS game at all because Florida is sitting there to take the second at-large bid for the SEC. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. It's gonna be a heck of a football game. I really think this is gonna be entertaining. But I'm gonna say Georgia pulls this out.
I really want you to be right. I don't think you are. Nick Saban and his evil empire in Tuscaloosa will have the team ready for this. He will be prepared for Georgia, particularly for Georgia's defense. This potentially could be another plodding, slow, ugly game that the SEC fans seem to enjoy so much. But I see Alabama winning this one and setting up what is on paper, especially if you're thinking about the history of college football, a classic matchup for the title game. Alabama will take this one. Next up, we have the Pac-12. We have UCLA traveling to Stanford to play for that conference title. What do you see there?
Quick, raise your hand if you saw this as the Pac-12 championship game at the beginning of the season. Nobody.
Insert crickets noise here.
Yeah, exactly. This was supposed to be Oregon USC, wasn't it?
Correct.
And obviously neither of them are in it. Oregon missed it by 1 game. By taking off some time against Stanford. No, not to discredit Stanford, because they played a heck of a football game in that game. But yeah, so we've got 2 teams that nobody predicted to be here, and they just played last week. And Stanford beat UCLA 35-17. There were no major injuries in that game. Why should we think that anything would turn out differently? So yeah, I obviously will go with Stanford in this game. And what's funny is that if UCLA were to win, and Nebraska wins the Big Ten championship. Remember way back, like week 2, when UCLA beat Nebraska, and we all went,
"Wow!"
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We all went,
Yes.
"Wow!" And in theory, they could meet again in the Rose Bowl.
That could be fun. That could be fun. A year of repeats for the Bruins, perhaps. However, I don't see UCLA beating this one. Stanford. Of all the games that I've been able to watch this year, Stanford actually has one of the most complete teams I've seen all year. The strength on both sides of the ball, the fact that they were able to come up with a defensive effort to play the kind of physical defense that Oregon doesn't like to see, that got them through that game. There's also what actually was a win against Notre Dame. But, we can't count that one either. Stanford wins this one, and I think, as they did the week ago, pretty handily. Next up, we don't have a conference title game in the Big 12, but there are 2 games that are coming up this weekend that will determine will determine a lot, actually, in what's going to happen both for that conference, for the BCS, and maybe for the BCS and some other teams. We have Texas at K-State. We have OU at TCU. Go ahead.
Kansas State, Colin Klein.
No.
I see Kansas State winning that game, and if that happens, then there's no doubt about it. They're going to the BCS.
Correct.
If they were to lose that game, Oklahoma and TCU, you can't just slouch over them. I mean, ask Texas. I mean, look what they, and we predicted that. I predicted that game wrong too. On Thanksgiving, I thought Texas was going to win that game, and then hello TCU. I don't think Oklahoma can overlook TCU. I think there's still a possibility that TCU wins that game, and then it doesn't matter.
Correct.
But I think Kansas State, they're riding high right now. I think they're going to beat Texas, and that's just going to put the end to it, and they'll be representing the Big 12 and the BCS.
Okay. I think I agree with you. Kansas State will have one more strong effort. It's a home game. Everyone sure wants to beat Texas. And the win by the Wildcats gives them the conference championship, gives them the automatic BCS berth. OU and TCU, that's a tougher game now for me than it would have been even a week ago. I agree that's going to be tight. I think OU will pull that out, and that would, I think, likely give the Big 12 K-State with the automatic, and probably OU with a fairly assured at-large berth to the BCS game. And actually, the Big 12 game that I really want to watch this weekend is Oklahoma State and Baylor. I think that one could be kind of crazy. Doesn't mean anything as far as the BCS goes, but I may blow off the other 2 and watch that one instead. I hesitate to even include this with the other the conferences that we've talked about so far, but I guess you gotta, because they're automatic qualifiers, sort of. We have the Big East, the de facto championship there, Louisville at Rutgers. Do we care?
Well, we do, because of what we're going to talk about after this.
Oh my God, here we go.
Yeah, this is where it gets all confusing. Everybody get your pens and paper out, or ready to take notes here. This is going to get interesting.
There will be a test.
There will be a test at the end.
And I'm going to fail it.
I had to write down my notes to make sure I didn't fail this. Both teams enter with Louisville and Rutgers enter with identical records, and where it gets confusing is based on who wins this game, who will represent the Big East, if any team at all represents the Big East in the BCS title game. I must credit this to my boyfriend who put this line out, that Louisville Rutgers, has anybody said that this is part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge yet?
Hey, I like that.
Yeah, because that's going on. It should be included, and in a couple of years it will be. Either way, both teams had the opportunity to potentially clinch the Big East last week, and both teams failed to do so.
In true Big East fashion.
In true Big East fashion, right? Nobody wants to win the Big East. They were both terrible losses. Louisville, lost 2 straight, actually. They were undefeated, and they lost 2 straight. They lost to Syracuse, and then they lost to UConn in triple overtime last week. And Rutgers, all they had to do was beat Pitt. That's all they had to do. You beat Pitt, you win the Big East, and they couldn't do it. The other interesting note here is that Rutgers' other loss is to Kent State. Keep that in mind. File that away.
English professors would call this foreshadowing.
It is foreshadowing. File that one away.
Okay.
There's one difference in this game that made this relatively easy for me to pick. Teddy Bridgewater, not healthy. He's playing the game. He's got a broken wrist. He's banged up. They're coming off of 2 really awful losses, and Rutgers is playing at home. I think that Rutgers finds a way to pull this out. Which, if that's the case, then they win the Big East. Period. Now, here's where notes get tricky. This is the first part of the note taking.
Before we go off from this, I do want to say that I think Rutgers is going to win. However, if they don't, this becomes interesting, and I want you guys to pay attention.
This gets really interesting.
Yes.
Okay, if Louisville wins, and Cincinnati, which plays UConn, if Cincinnati beats UConn, so Louisville wins, Cincinnati wins, we end up with a 4-way tie in the Big East.
Oh.
That would involve Louisville, Rutgers, Cincinnati, and Syracuse.
Okay.
Because of head-to-head matchups and the records within each other, we can pretty much count out Cincinnati and Syracuse for the BCS because they have a 1-2 record. Louisville and Rutgers would both have a 2-1 record. And because Louisville owns the head-to-head against Rutgers, Louisville will get the BCS bid and win the Big East.
Okay.
If Louisville wins and UConn wins,
right,
then we end up with a 3-way tie.
Okay.
With Louisville, Rutgers, and Syracuse.
Okay.
And that gets, you would think a 3-way tie would be easier, but it's actually more difficult because of the way that they beat him, who beat her, who beat, it just gets all crazy. What it boils down to is that the highest ranked BCS team in the BCS rankings will win the Big East. It will likely be Louisville. But we don't know that for a fact because it's the BCS. So the easiest situation is Rutgers wins, they win the Big East. If Louisville wins, all heck will break loose.
Maybe if Louisville wins and there's a 3 or 4-way tie, we could have a tournament with the 2 losing teams having to go to the ACC, and the winning team, if it's not Rutgers, going to the Big Ten. Or one of the losing teams goes to the ACC, one has to go to the Big 12, and one has to play in the Pac-12. How would that be? Okay.
Sure. I mean, at this point, isn't that what conference realignment is all about anyway?
I would be okay with that. Let's settle this on the field. This stuff, the Big East discussion is germane to our final game, and yes, we saved the Mid-American Conference Championship as the final game of our championship week edition. We have Kent State, we have Northern Illinois. Both teams are 11-1. Both teams have semi-disgraceful losses on the record. Both teams also have solid wins outside of the conference as well. Before we get into what could happen here, what do you see as far as the game goes?
First of all, with the MAC, it is funny that this week, with everything that's happening, that the MAC went after the trademark for hashtag Maction. So they can sell T-shirts. How appropriate is that?
I want one of those T-shirts.
I want one too. That's what when I saw that, I was like, who wouldn't want a Maction T-shirt? Because who doesn't love Mid-American football in the middle of the week? Anyhow, looking at all this on paper, Northern Illinois is favored in this game, and it makes sense that they're favored in this game. They have a quarterback, Jordan Lynch, who, if he didn't play for Northern Illinois, would really seriously be in the Heisman discussion.
Seriously, anywhere. I've seen them play twice this season, and if he played anywhere, if he played in any of the AQ conferences, he's a potential Heisman finalist, probable, I would say. He is that good, if you guys haven't seen.
He's remarkable. Kent State's lone loss on the year, they got trounced by Kentucky, which hurts. I mean, it really does. It really hurts their strength of schedule. Northern Illinois' lone loss on the season was a 1-point loss to Iowa in the first week of the season, and that was one of those we were all crazy about. Oh my gosh, Iowa almost lost to Northern Illinois, and now it's almost the other way around. Like, oh my gosh, Northern Illinois lost to Iowa. But Iowa, and as we were talking before we started filming the show tonight, was Iowa is at least a little tiny bit better of a team than Kentucky, I think.
I think so.
Just based on who they played, and their strength of schedule, it boggles my mind that Kent State is ranked higher than Northern Illinois. But Northern Illinois is favored in the MAC title game. Doesn't compute on any level. That being said, I think what we're about to talk about is not going to happen, unfortunately, and I think Northern Illinois is going to end up winning this game.
Okay. I kind of think that's going to be the case as well. However, I'm going to pick the Golden Flashers, just 2 hours away.
That would be Flashes, not Flashers. Golden Flashers would be something completely different.
That's an old habit of mine. Just for the sole reason that I want to see what's going to happen with the Bowl Championship Series and the very real possibility that the American Conference team actually could possibly get an automatic bid. Mm-hmm. I am going to before we turn you loose on this. There's a thing that I want to read. This is the BCLS selection procedures. This is Rule 3B. This is referring to the champion of several of the non-qualifying conferences. 3B says those champions will earn an automatic berth in the BCS Bowl game if either 3B, such a team is ranked in the top 16 of the final BCS standings, and its ranking in the final BCS standings is higher than that of a champion of a conference that has an annual automatic berth in one of the BCS bowls. For the sake of our argument here, that second one that we're referring to is the Big East. At the moment, Kent State is ranked 17th. They are 1 slot behind UCLA. If you figure Stanford beats UCLA in the Pac-12 title game, UCLA will drop. Kent State, if they win, moves up at least to 16th. And as you go through the list of the teams that are ahead of them, obviously a good number of teams, all of them from automatic qualifying conferences, but they are all accounted for because of the limit of 2 teams per conference in the BCS. The one variable here is Clemson. They are, for a number, they had a lousy finish to the season. They had a lousy bowl appearance in the BCS game last year. It is possible that Kent State could get a BCS bid. Just for the sake of argument here, if Kent wins, what do you see happening?
There could be some interesting scenarios here because I think I saw a couple mentions that representatives from the Orange Bowl were going to be at the MAC title game. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, we very possibly could see this will sound hilarious, but it is possible that we could see a Florida State Kent State Orange Bowl. I mean, that really could happen. And yeah. I guess as much as I would love to see a MAC team make the BCS, because I honestly think that the MAC is a stronger conference this year than the Big East. Mm-hmm. I think that can be said almost unanimously that the MAC has been stronger this year than the Big East. Mm-hmm. Kent State lost to Kentucky. I can't wipe that out of my head. That was the one major conference game that they played, and they got beat by a really bad team. Is that what we want to see? As much as I really, really want, I went to a small school. Mm-hmm. You went to a MAC school. Mm-hmm. We want to see this happen as much as we want MAC T-shirts. But I don't know. I hope it happens. I personally would love to see Northern Illinois win the game, and by some miracle end up ranked 16th. I don't know if it's possible.
They're currently ranked 21st.
Right.
That's a big jump.
It's a huge jump. It's a 5-point jump. I don't think it's possible.
Not saying it couldn't happen, but probably not.
If it was Northern Illinois that could bump the BCS, I'd be all in.
Okay.
Let's go Northern Illinois. I'm not sure, and I like Kent State. I don't know.
We could be looking at a fairly serious BCS Buster, and certainly that would be a topic for discussion. We don't have dates yet. We haven't made all the arrangements, but in the coming weeks, you guys can look for a fairly hefty college bowl game CNC preview. And we'll have more about that as the details emerge. Until that time, Carla, enjoy championship week.
I will. You too, as much as possible.
Hey, let's go Bucks.
I know. Let's go Knits.
I'm cheering for Baylor this weekend. That's pretty much all I got.
Go Bears.
Carla, have a great weekend, and thank you guys for watching. We will see you again soon on the Carla and Crappy Show. Bye.